All right, what I'm gonna show you tonight, is I've been holding on to for a long time, so this is gonna be big. I'm gonna show you irrefutable proof that the persecution of Hoot Crawford, the attorney, the Marsy's Law attorney for the 16-year-old girl who Sheriff Tommy Ford arrested and who Larry Bassford, the state attorney, prosecuted, and the judge, Kelvin C. Wells, that they brought in from Walton, denied his ability to defend himself because he was not able to challenge the legality of the state of DCF taking custody of the 16-year-old girl at a voluntary interview. I'm going to show you proof that the Bay County Sheriff's Office was never concerned about the safety of the girl. They were obsessed with the 16-year-old girl. And they, I believe, I know that's true. And I believe that they had to take Hoot Crawford because they were afraid. When I say they, I mean the local cartel and State Attorney Larry Bassford was concerned that Hoot Crawford was going to make good on what he had expressed an interest in, and that is running against Larry Bassford for state attorney. That election is in August. So, like they did with Greg Wilson, they had to get him off the ballot. It was another election interference in Bay County, in my opinion, based on information and belief. But what you're going to see tonight is proof that they were never, ever concerned, as they said over and over, about the 16-year-old girl being molested by her brother. That was not an issue. It's such a disturbing thing. Remember, they arrested her attorney. She had the right to an attorney, and he had the right to represent her. And Judge Wells took away their absolute defense, which was challenging the legality of the shelter order of taking the girl into custody. I mean, that would be like a warrant being issued on you and you being arrested, and then the judge says you are not allowed to challenge the legality of the warrant. It's absolutely insane. Everybody knows it's insane. And they had it covered from the sheriff's office to the prosecutors to the judge. And, you know, it's being challenged. And the judge is dragging his heels, of course. You remember that 2 of the 6 jurors were found to have lied during jury selection. There have been motions filed, and the judge, Kelvin C. Wells, to my knowledge, at least last I heard, hadn't even responded to those yet. And Hoot Crawford is scheduled to be sentenced next month. But what you're going to see tonight is unbelievable. I'm also going to tell you the latest in Mexico Beach. There was an incredible hearing today. So the mayor in Mexico Beach, Michele Miller, who was elected last year and defeated incumbent Al Cathy, the longtime mayor, who is also the owner of Ace Hardware. And part of the reason, I believe, that the new mayor, Michele Miller, was being kept from looking at the finances, eventually they discovered that the mayor had received $500,000 or more to Ace Hardware from the city. And there's so much more now that the state auditors are there. The state auditors are there. And as you know, probably, their attorney, Clint McCahill, stepped down. He didn't resign, but he said, now that the auditors are here, he read a statement. He didn't really say now that the auditors are here, but he said, I've decided I don't want to be the attorney here anymore in Mexico Beach. And the FEMA consultant over there, who 5 months ago showed up and said, look, $44 million went to debris pickup. Here's where the other millions of dollars went after Hurricane Michael. Well, that guy quit and he moved to Europe. Oh, yeah. I mean, it goes on and on. But there was a hearing today because Mayor Michele Miller has sued the city because they are violating the city charter and preventing, and this is even what the Joint Legislative Auditing Commission has said. They have prevented the mayor, the CFO of the city, according to charter, from looking at the finances. They especially don't want her to look at the payroll, because as Jerry Bad Liability Smith pointed out, there's a lot of sensitive information in there, and not any broad can go poking around. We got Chris Hubbard and his girlfriend, they're looking at it, okay? And those are the only ones who need to be looking at that. Well, the Joint Legislative Auditing Committee thought that was pretty weird, and so they're all over it. So she sued them, and I believe it's March 8th, there is a hearing on that. But today there was a hearing on Mayor Michele Miller's other lawsuit. She has filed a lawsuit against the bogus recall committee. They're trying to recall her. It's a 2-year seat, right? And she's almost completed 1 year, half of her term. And they have lied and said that she committed a sunshine law violation. And they said that she had exceeded her charter authority by, I guess it was getting rid of a contractor. So anyway, that a hearing on that was heard today. And the election, the recall election, is scheduled in Mexico Beach for March 16th. So I'm going to go over these things with you. It's going to be quite a show, with especially when you see what I'm going to show you. Proof. Back to the Hoot Crawford case. Proof that the sheriff's office was never concerned about the safety of the 16-year-old girl. All that coming right up.
When your life is on the line, hire the lawyer who lives in our community, works in our community, and worships in our community. I'm El Saulene, your Panama City Beach lawyer. 850-215-0628.
Don't let back pain and neck pain get you down. Find relief at Brown Chiropractic Center on St. Andrews Boulevard in Panama City. Dr. Sherry Brown helps people heal naturally with chiropractic adjustments and deep tissue massage. Call 769-3777. All right, let's start off with the Hoot Crawford stuff. You're going to want to show this to friends and family. This needs to get out. It's absolutely huge. So let's start with that. If you recall, the attorney was arrested by the sheriff's office, charged with interfering with child custody because the 16-year-old girl had gone with her parents and her attorney, Hoot Crawford, who represented her. The parents had their own attorneys, because the Bay County Sheriff's Office was harassing the ever living out of this family because they were obsessed with this 16-year-old girl, specifically investigator Trey Fondren, who was chasing her around like the villain in Cape Fear, terrorizing the hell out of this girl. And so they said, okay, we're going to go to the Children's Advocacy Center for this voluntary interview that I don't want to do. She didn't want to do it because they'd been screaming at her mom a few days earlier. They had sent her to, they'd Baker acted her. And so she didn't want to do it, but she did want to, she agreed to show up as long as her attorney could be with her. And her attorney was Hoot Crawford. So they didn't like that. They being particularly Lieutenant Jeremy Mathis, who was a board member of the Children's Advocacy Center, as was Tommy Ford and Larry Bassford and more. But anyway, you'll see. What I'm going to show you first is I'm going to refresh your memory by showing you the interaction at the safe space at the Children's Advocacy Center. All right, let's see here. We're going to do this one. Yeah, okay. I'm going to show you from a previous show. The interaction at the Children's Advocacy Center between Lieutenant Jeremy Mathis, who's standing up, and investigator Trey Fondren, who's standing with him, and they're yelling at her attorney. And the family can hear this in the room next door. Listen to this. Right, here we go. There it is. So what you see here is Those are Bay County Sheriff investigators. And the yellow shirt is the boss of those two guys. That's Lieutenant Jeremy Mathis. And the other guy is Investigator Fondren. Okay. Fondren was the lead on this case of this 16-year-old girl who had said that her brother had molested her years ago when they were kids, under 10 years old, and in another state. And it's being investigated in Florida by these guys. And so the family hired a lawyer. And what they've done here is Hoot Crawford was with the family, the mom and the stepfather, and the 16-year-old girl. And Lieutenant Jeremy Mathis here is furious. He says, you are not going to interfere with this investigation. The policy, basically what he's saying, he doesn't say this, but basically their argument is the policy here in this nonprofit, when DCF talks to a girl voluntarily, this is not compelled, this is a voluntary interview. Nobody else is allowed in there, not even their attorney. That's our rule. Well, that violates the Constitution. All right, forgive me. I want to make a correction. I said when DCF interviews the girl, it's not DCF that interrogates the girl, that interviews the girl. It is actually CPT, Child Protective Team member, working with the Children's Advocacy Center, and they're following the guidelines set out by the Florida Health Department. Okay. DCF is involved because Lieutenant Mathis gets pissed off and tells Hoot, I'll just call my buddy who's the supervisor at DCF, and I'll have you and the family kicked out of here, and we'll just snatch that girl away, and we'll do whatever we want with her without an attorney. But I wanted to correct myself because it's not DCF that does the actual interview. It's DCF that takes custody of her. So back to this of the state of Florida and Marsy's Law. But Sheriff's Office claims that is not that's overruled by their policy and the way they do things around here. So you're going to see this is pretty tense. Hoot Crawford is saying, I'm going to play it right now. And after this, a series of other things goes on, but basically they're free to leave. So Hoot Crawford takes the girl, and the DCF worker says she's being detained, in custody of the state. She's being sheltered. So she stands behind his vehicle to try to falsely imprison him so he can't move. Well, he backs up a little bit, drives over a curve, and he says, look, I'm going to be at my office. If you get a court order, you can come get her. The woman claimed that he ran her over, and you're going to see that video next.
I don't care. At this point, you are interfering with the investigation into a child molestation case. You're making statements in front of the girl that this is a mental health thing that never happened. Who's told you that? Who's told you that? Who? I mean, all we're going to do is sew up and you're just going to stare at me. You are interfering with an investigation at this point. So if all you're going to do is stare at me, what's the outcome here?
Tell me what my obligation is to answer your questions in a setting like this.
There's no obligation to answer.
Then I'm not going to, I choose not to answer your question.
But what I'm trying to figure out is at what point do you think that you're helping this girl? Because you and I both know this is an end around to try to keep her brother from being charged. That's all it is.
You can certainly have your suspicions of whatever you want to have your suspicions of.
Okay, so just let the girl be molested, let her move on with her life, right? Right? I mean, I've known you and I've trusted you for years. You and I.
It's important to note that the allegations the girl made about her brother, if it happened, it happened many years ago, more than 5 years ago, in another state. The sheriff's office has no jurisdiction over this. They cannot investigate. This is not the thing. But the girl later said she didn't do it. The girl, according to court documents, and I hate saying this, but I need you to know, according to court documents, she was molested by her biological father, her estranged biological father. So she's got, understandably, this is a big deal, and she's going through a mental trauma. And so they have an attorney. We don't know if the boy did it or not. But the boy's not around her, and the deputies are claiming they're investigating this outside of their jurisdiction. So what you have here is the sheriff's office berating an officer of the court representing a potential victim who, under Marcy's law, constitutional right, has invoked her right to an attorney. And they are saying, and they said in depositions, and they'll say during trial, that Hoot Crawford, as their attorney, was giving her bad representation and not looking out for her best interest. That's their argument. That's why they arrested him. And they say that in the depositions. America's a different place than it used to be. Who will be held accountable for this?
I have had multiple discussions. We've had very friendly discussions. We've had very friendly discussions when we had
today
very
you chose
much
to end
differences
that
in case.
friendship. Today you come in here and decide to
No,
end it.
Hoot,
To
today
shit all
you
over it.
come in
You
here.
didn't come in here like be a
interfering.
man and talk to me. You
Today
want to come in here
you come
screaming
in
and
here-
hollering and embarrassing me in
First
front of
off,
my
I haven't
client.
screamed and
I'm not
hollered
going to
at
put
all.
up with that. No bullshit.
First of all, you chose to come to the CAC and you chose not to allow somebody to be interviewed who has potentially been molested in the past. All indication that she's been molested in the past. You chose to interfere in that process. You have chosen to sit in here with my investigator and not allow, quote unquote, your client to answer questions.
It's not quote
Is
unquote.
she
you to
obligated to
answer-
answer
Hold
your
on. It's not quote unquote your client. There's no question, and they all agreed in depositions that she has invoked the right to an attorney. It's not quote unquote her client. Do you see how dismissive they are about her having legal representation at a voluntary interview where they are free to leave? Watch.
Allow, quote unquote, your client to answer questions.
Wow.
Is
For
she
you to
obligated to
answer
answer
them.
your questions?
In a child molestation interview, it would be nice if she answered questions.
I understand it. Is she obligated? Do you have a
Are
court
you-
order? Do you have a statute?
By the way, during depositions, Lieutenant Jeremy Mathis couldn't recall any of this stuff. I mean, he recalled the conversation, he recalled a few things, but he couldn't recall many details that it was interesting to see. He couldn't recall if he said, do I need to get a court order? Then he later said, well, I meant get a court order for DCF to take the custody of the child. What did he just say right there? The whole thing about the attorney, quote unquote, client. I mean, the deposition was a wreck.
It requires
Are
her to
you
say
obligated?
anything.
Is that what we need to do, Hoot?
Are
Do we need to
she
get
obligated to answer your questions,
okay.
sir?
Do
I'm
we need
asking
to
you.
get
That's what I'm
DCF?
asking you.
Do we need
Is
to
she
get,
obligated? You said she could voluntarily talk
Do
to
we
you.
need
She has
to get-
chosen not to.
No, she didn't choose not to. You chose it. Her parents chose for her not to. Do we need to get DCF to shelter that child? Remove y'all from the CAC, her parents, yourself included, from the CAC, and then get an order to do an interview with her? Because we can do that all this afternoon if we need to.
I can't stop you from doing anything, Jeremy. You chose
All right.
to do what you chose to do.
No, you
All right, so that's exactly what he did. He called his longtime 20-some year cohort at DCF. I mean, gosh, he was pretty confident he can get all that done this afternoon, and he did. They basically told the judge that the girl was in imminent danger with her parents, her attorney, the Bay County Sheriff's Office, at the Safe Space Children's Advocacy Center. That's what they told the judge, and the judge said, sure, snatch her away. And so they did that, and Judge Kelvin C. Wells would not allow Hoot Crawford to challenge the legality of that order. The law is you cannot take a child out of the lawful custody of the state. The lawful custody. And he couldn't challenge if it was lawful custody. Now I'm going to prove to you that you've seen that and it's fresh on your mind. I'm going to prove to you, because now I'm going to show you the video footage from trial. From the trial where Jeremy Mathis is on the witness stand. And they're going to ask Jeremy Mathis, were you afraid that the brother was going to do something to the girl? You remember the whole premise of that is, what are you going to just keep letting her get molested? Who? Let her go on with her life, keep letting her get molested? Let's see under oath during trial if Lieutenant Jeremy Mathis really believed that the girl was in danger of being molested or not. And then you got to ask yourself what the hell this was really all about. And I don't know for sure that answer. Watch this. This is from trial. You're gonna hear me cover up the names of the brother and the 16-year-old girl, but I will put a. You'll see when they're talking about him whether they're talking about brother or teenage girl, brother or teenage girl. You'll follow along. I'll show this twice. Watch.
Your concern was that he was going to somehow do something, right?
No, sir.
What? How is that possible? You just saw him say that. Your concern was that the brother was going to do something to the girl. No, sir. All right, I'm going to play the whole thing now. We're going to watch it all the way through now. All right. Sorry. Here we go. This was the most shocking answer in the whole trial.
Your concern was that he was going to somehow do something, right?
No, sir. Okay, so just let the girl be molested, let her move on with her life, right? Right?
You had no concern he was going to do anything.
I can't predict the future, Mr. Pumphrey. I can't say what I was going to do. I can say that my concern was for her mental health. My concern was for her emotional health. My concern was for that girl.
So that's the standard now. If the sheriff's office is concerned about the mental health of your 16-year-old daughter at the Children's Advocacy Center, that this guy in the blue, Fondren, is determined to get alone and talk about sex to without her attorney, and they did. They did. Oh my God, this is unbelievable. That's the standard by the sheriff's office now. They can just call the DCF and they've got it all coordinated with DCF and the local judges.
So just let the girl be molested, let her move on with her life.
And your concern for that girl involved potentially doing something to her, isn't that correct?
The fact that he was back in the area, from what I was told, and that's what led to her having to go get evaluated. Yes.
Okay, so he's kind of the root of the issue.
One of them.
Okay. And so as a law enforcement officer, when you have a suspect, what do you do as far as that suspect? Do you identify them and locate where they are?
Was not a suspect in the criminal act that occurred in Bay County.
Wow.
You and I both know this is an end around to try to keep her brother from being charged. All it is.
So you weren't worried about potentially committing a criminal act?
I worry about a lot of people potentially committing criminal acts. It doesn't mean that I can take action until they do. You and I both know this is an end around to try to keep her brother from being charged. Unfortunately, this is a reactionary business.
Well, understanding that, but you have an identifiable suspect, right?
Correct.
You're worried that he may harm in the future, specifically molested.
I'm worried that his presence is causing issues for her.
That's the standard now. That's the standard now. Bay County Sheriff's Office, if they're concerned that your 16-year-old is having issues, they can just snatch your kid away, even if they are completely safe in the Children's Advocacy Center with him, her parents, and her attorney. I'm going to run this through again, and I'm not going to say a word. Watch. And by the way, the guy standing up there, Investigator Fondren, he said that he saw the brother walk in the house, in the apartment, or into the building, punch in the numbers in the gate, go right into the building. If they believed that he was going there to molest the 16-year-old girl, why did they not go knock on the door and see if she's okay? They didn't do that. They simply called DCF so they could get her alone and interview her alone without an attorney. If they really believed that what he's saying there, they didn't even do anything when they claimed they saw the boy, who they did not even know what he looked like, walk into the building.
Your concern was that he was going to somehow do something, right?
No, sir. Okay, so just let the girl be molested, let her move on with her life, right? Right?
You had no concern he was going to do anything.
I can't predict the future, Mr. Pumphrey. I can't say what I was going to do. I can say that my concern was for her mental health. My concern was for her emotional health. My concern was for that girl.
Okay, so just let the girl be molested, let her move on with her life.
And your concern for that girl involved potentially doing something to her, isn't that correct?
The fact that he was back in the area, from what I was told, and that's what led to her having to go get evaluated. Yes.
Okay, so he's kind of the root of the issue.
One of them.
Okay. And so as a law enforcement officer, when you have a suspect, what do you do as far as that suspect? Do you identify them and locate where they are?
Was not a suspect in the criminal act that occurred in Bay County.
You and I both know this is an end around to try to keep her brother from being charged. All it is.
So you weren't worried about potentially committing a criminal act?
I worry about a lot of people potentially committing criminal acts. It doesn't mean that I can take action until they do.
You and I both know this is an end around to try to keep her brother from being charged.
Unfortunately, this is a reactionary business.
Well, understanding that, but you have an identifiable suspect, right?
Correct.
You're worried that he may harm in the future, specifically molesting.
I'm worried that his presence is causing issues for her. That's my concern.
Isn't that amazing? They never believed it, and they testified to it. So that's still ongoing. Incidentally, Lieutenant Jeremy Mathis was the highest ranking Bay County Sheriff's supervisor listed when they got pissed off at me in August of 2022 rather, and sent 7 officers to surround our home and entered our closed and gated backyard and peeped in our windows and stuff for 7 minutes without a warrant, without anything, because they thought that Bernie Thompson had stolen AirPods after the same knuckleheads had said that about 2 other houses in the neighborhood. So that lawsuit's underway, by the way, unfortunately. But yeah, that dude worries me, Lieutenant Mathis, a lot. All right, now let me tell you what happened in Mexico Beach in the hearing that occurred today in a Bay County courtroom. And I'll tell you about that. I'm going to make sure you understand exactly what happened and exactly what the judge is considering, because the recall election for Mayor Miller based on fraudulent claims is set to take place on March 16th, just right around the corner. I'll tell you about that right after this.
You want to look good? You want to feel good? Little John's Big and Tall is where it's at, right across the street from Sky's Pizza Pie, 5700 North Davis Highway. You can find out more online at littlejohnsbigandtall.com. He's also a member of the iTex trading community, where your iTex dollars are welcome.
All right, so here's the issue at hand. The recall committee made 2 accusations against Mayor Miller. One, that she committed a sunshine law violation when she sent an email to the other members. And I think the email had something to do with, I still don't have access to the finances. And then one of her opponents, a citizen that lives across the street, a resident, she made a public record request and went to the podium and said, that's a sunshine law violation. That's a sunshine law violation. It's not actually, unless any of them respond to it. So that wasn't true. The second thing that they accuse her of is exceeding her charter authority by getting rid of a contractor. I believe that's the second thing that they claimed, which also is ridiculous. So the judge in the case today, Judge Goodman here in Bay County, he had a couple things to consider. One, there's not much time. I mean, the election is March 16th. And already ballots have been printed and they're being mailed out very soon for early voting for this recall election, right? So what Mayor Miller is challenging is the veracity or the truthfulness of these two claims. Because if those two claims didn't happen, what essentially will be going on is the court will be allowing the undermining of an actual election last year. So, and what the plaintiffs, what the recall committee, the defendants are saying is that it doesn't matter whether it's true or not. It's not within the court's purview to decide that. Very much like what Judge Calvin C. Wells did, right? You're not allowed to challenge the legality of the Bay County Sheriff's Office and DCF taking custody of the girl by lying to the court. You cannot even question that. That's just because they did it, you just have to accept that. They're doing the same thing in this case. They're saying, even if they aren't true, it's up to the voters to decide that. Now, the statute, the Florida statute for recalls does not lay it out very well. But there are other legal doctrines that essentially would make the recall petition null and void because the accusations are obviously false. And I believe even the recall committee has acknowledged that without a response from one of the other members, there's no sunshine law violation. That's already settled. So what the judge was concerned about was two things. Well, first of all, he's concerned about the timing of it, but he's pissed off that he's put in this position, and understandably so. But that wasn't the fault of Mayor Miller. That was the fault of the recall committee. They kept dragging their feet, hoping that this would, spill over and be too late. And that was one of their arguments in the court today. But what the judge is trying to decide, number one, a major question was how does the court enjoin the Supervisor of Elections into this when neither of you mentioned the Supervisor of Elections at all? The Supervisor of Elections is not a party of this lawsuit. So how do I enjoin him in there? And that's something that neither one of the sides had even brought up, but the judge said it has to be brought up. So Mayor Miller's attorney, Marie Maddox, said, okay, well, I'm going to ask if I can submit a motion today that would enjoin the Supervisor of Elections. And the judge said, get it done today. So that solved that problem. The second problem that the judge has, or the question at issue now, the only question at issue now for Judge Goodman, is whether or not it is the court's decision to decide whether or not the recall committee is lying, or whether it is the voters' decision whether or not the recall committee is lying. It doesn't make sense, because the voters should be deciding whether or not to keep her based on what? The accusations. If the accusations are false, then the voters don't have the correct information. That is not a fair election. So the judge is concerned, rightfully so, because I don't believe a Florida judge has issued a ruling on this. He would be, I believe, the first to issue a ruling on this. And he really doesn't want to have to do that, but he does have to do that now, because unless he dismisses the lawsuit, which he still might do, because both sides have to file an argument. The Michele Miller is going to argue what I just explained. How do the voters? How's it a fair election if the voters are given fraudulent information? Mayor Miller is saying it is up to the court to decide that. The defendants, the recall committee, they're saying it's not the court's decision at all. So the judge is going to decide that based on case law, based on the arguments, the legal doctrine being made by both sides. Now, he's going to decide that and probably issue a ruling on whether or not to dismiss Mayor Miller's lawsuit against the recall committee and allow the recall to happen, or he is going to uphold Mayor Miller's lawsuit and then the recall election will not happen. So that's what it's based on. Is it up to the court to decide, or is it up to the voters to decide? Specifically decide if fraudulent charges should be the basis of a recall election. Now, Judge Goodman said a couple of times, or expressed some concern about stopping an election. Okay. And I kept thinking, it seems to me more like the judge has an opportunity to preserve last year's election by not allowing fraudulent claims against Mayor Miller to have a recall election. But again, this is a very unusual, I don't think it's been done in Florida. So it'll be like a ruling of first impression. And so Judge Goodman is stuck in a tough place. And whoever makes the best argument, I believe, because it seems to me like Judge Goodman is fair, is going to prevail. And if he doesn't have enough information to make a ruling, then there's going to be, on March 8th, there's going to be in person another hearing, and that will be an evidentiary hearing where they bring in witnesses and all of that. But that would take place March 8th, just 8 days before the election. That would be very difficult. So my guess is that Judge Goodman is going to issue a ruling before that. But that's where that is. So was it a good day or a bad day for Mayor Miller in court? I would say it's a good day, because the motion was to dismiss the case, and then it would have been over. So Judge Goodman is giving them both, or is at least giving Mayor Miller another crack at this, of saying, hey, these are false, and it's up to the court to throw this out. So that's where that stands. Very interesting stuff. But there's going to be more that you'll see in the Hoot Crawford case as his sentencing is quickly approaching. I just wanted to share those things with you tonight. As always, I want to thank the Unknown Patriot for your support of this show, because without the sponsors and without those of you who throw a tip in the tip jar at Patreon, patreon.com/Bernie Thompson, as little as $5 a month. Couldn't do it without you. Thank you so much to those of you who do. Patreon.com/Bernie Thompson. It's anonymous, it's easy, and you can quit at any time. All right, with that, I'm gonna get out of here. Lots coming up this week. Yeah, big stuff coming up this week.